Karanokyoukai, The Garden of Sinners, first came out as a series of novels written by Kanoko Nasu and illustrated by Takashi Takeuchi, which were released online on their website, Bamboo Broom, and at Comiket the following year. 2 years later, they would release Tsukihime, a visual novel that would change everything. But Tsukihime is not the focus, for it is on Karanokyoukai adaptation by the now well-renowned Ufotable. It's the start of the ongoing fruitful partnership between them and typemoon, and shows the ideas, styles, and base for future projects. Even without the future works in mind, it stands by itself as a solid work of fiction, and a gruesome yet heartwarming story. Gardenofsinners are a series of films and OVAs released in a chronological order. The first movie, Overlooking View, released in 2007, and is technically the fifth in order of the series. Whether one watches it in release order or chronological order is largely insignificant, as most of the movies in the series are self-contained stories with references or nods to installments that occurred earlier in the timeline. Set mainly in the 90s, it tells the story of Makiya Kokuto and his classmate Shiki Ryugi, a young girl with a dual personality and a strange ability that allows her to see and interact with the concept of death in anything and everything. These mystic eyes of death perception sound overpowered, and they are. One may touch a flower in the right spot and see it wilt away, cut ghosts, or even the potential future if it is given form. Makiya and Shiki's stories are the core of Gardenofsinners, especially their differences. Shiki is cold and distant, both with others and herself. She is hollow inside and constantly has inner conflict with her own loneliness. By contrast, Makiya is warm. He welcomes others, often much too easily. He himself is firm in his beliefs and, for the most part, is at peace with himself. They solve problems in two different ways. Shiki believes that in order to stop people like her, they need to be taught a lesson by force. Makiya solves problems much more passively, showing that more often than not, supernatural beings need sympathy rather than a slaughter. Makiya and Shiki, as well as the other cast of characters within these tales, demonstrate that physical strength is not mental strength, and shouldn't be a substitute for it either. Most of the troubled characters within Gardenofsinners have powers that are beyond most humans' comprehension, but what they have done with that power stops them from being human themselves. Perhaps the most stark contrast between Shiki and Makiya isn't related to strength, but something much more simple: their idea of murder. Makiya doesn't condone murder, he hates it. Shiki believes murder is the only thing that keeps her alive, yet holds a sort of worship and reverence for it. These contrasts, however, are what make Shiki and Makiya's relationship work so well. If Makiya is in danger, the first one to act is Shiki, whose decisive and straightforward behavior are of one that is not completely human. Makiya, though, is not without his own irrationalities, usually created by his devotion to Shiki. Makiya can go to extreme, dangerous, and even stupid lengths to ensure Shiki's safety, offering sacrifices that are often not needed but dramatically alter the events taking place. The watch time of each and every movie ranges from about 45 minutes to 2 hours, which means that, at its best, Gardenofsinners has deep, engaging stories with solid action, unsettling horror, and interesting story elements that effectively present themes such as death, escapism, suicide, reincarnation, and the duality of man. But when it is subpar, it feels like a drawn-out story with a sure direction, but a weak plot and boring mystery that doesn't get one thinking or leave the viewer with lingering questions. All these flaws made worse by the fact that it is about 3 times the length of a typical anime episode. Thankfully, Gardenofsinners, for the most part, does not have this problem. It uses its time efficiently. A lot can happen in 6 minutes, but nothing can happen in 60. However, both are executed completely, building up to a satisfying conclusion that gives the viewer a sense of peace. Gardenofsinners has a solid, complete story, and regardless of the format or studio, a good story is a good story. Yet the sky's the limit when a story like this is given in the hands of a studio like Ufotable. Studio Ufotable, the saints of Japanese animation, the greatest studio to ever exist, the goats of Sakuga. Whatever you call Ufotable, their unlimited budget works are undeniable, and the ability to mend 2D and 3D so effectively in an industry that seems to almost never get CGI right is utterly impressive. While they had created adaptations before, most, with the exception of OVAs for the popular Tales of and God Eater series, likely weren't as known as karanokyoukai. But before Demon Slayer episode 19's, the Tales of openings, the Fate series, there was karanokyoukai. It was the origin of the Ufotable style of animation, the one that has become a staple for all of their future projects, openings, and series that they create. It's as if they experimented with the series, and it evolved with their own style, using 3D on cars, railings, and background environments, while having 2D characters who usually holds 2D items. Even in its earliest iteration, the overlooking view, karanokyoukai animation is crisp and only feels dated in comparison with the most bombastically created anime of recent years. Shiki's eyes, her hair, the rain, the trees all have both a life and lifelessness to them. The cinematography often has long shots in order to create an unsettling tone which add to the horror underlying beneath Mifune City's peaceful exterior. Karanokyoukai doesn't have a brightness to it, and it's not supposed to. It has a bloody, grim, evil atmosphere, and the darker lighting displays this very well. As with all experiments, karanokyoukai animation does have some kinks, primarily in battle, where Ufotable seem to go through a weird motion blur shaky camera phase. Not only is it disorienting and dizzying, but often meaningless. It could be meant to show the intensity of the battle, but the scenes in karanokyoukai that do not have this effect are often more compelling. For example, without context, here's a fight scene with this effect to the extreme, and here's a fight scene with almost none of these effects, which was much earlier in the film. Simplicity is key, and there's no need to do more than necessary. When Ufotable grows out of this phase, karanokyoukai is genuinely gorgeous. The character designs later on also seem to imitate Takeuchi's own style well, and it becomes a lot more recognizable to their other works. Watching karanokyoukai, you get a sense that there is a lot more potential to be seen from Ufotable. Luckily, that potential has come to fruition. There is one more part that makes karanokyoukai complete, and it potentially contributes more to the work than the visuals ever could. That is, of course, the sounds. Yuji Kaijura, the composer of karanokyoukai soundtrack, deserves a medal, providing music for series that range from Demon Slayer, SAO, Madoka and Erased, to Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicles, Xenosaga, Dot Hack, and Pandora Hearts. She has probably given people their favorite OST tracks without them even knowing. Most can hardly imagine watching Fate without her. Zero, Heaven's Feel, and Case Files all have her work in them. But in karanokyoukai, she was given a weapon that would make her brilliant scores even better. Kalafina. They need no introduction, but if necessary, type Magia on YouTube and be blessed. With Kalafina providing vocals to supply her, Yuji Kaijura worked her magic, and thankfully, it worked wonders. Karanokyoukai soundtrack is tragic and memorable. It needed to make a lasting impression as the series spends a lot of time in silence. Shiki's theme shows her inner turmoil and fear of loneliness despite wishing it for herself. And this theme, the one playing in the background, is one whose impact you don't notice until it truly hits home. Like a memory that you forgot, only for it to turn up as if it was an old friend. Karanokyoukai OST is probably the most impressive aspect. The calming, gut-wrenching tranquility of its flutes, lyres, harps, and cellos are what will keep it in the minds of all those who give their ears to it. Typemoon and Ufotable have collaborated on many different projects since karanokyoukai, all well known. From anime adaptations of Fate Zero and 2 of the 3 Stay Night routes, to openings for both Real Tenua and Hollow Ataraxia's PS Vita versions, as well as the opening to the upcoming Tsukihime game, which releases in Japan in late August. Although Ufotable has gotten a lot more recognition since a certain battle shonen appeared on its doorstep, karanokyoukai still remains as a unique experience. The plot, characters, and soundtrack show this. All of these pushed even further by the animation of a young studio that was just learning how to run. Karanokyoukai stays with many viewers because of all these things, and Ufotable and Typemoon is a partnership that is definitely here to stay.